Building genuine happiness, practical strategies for thriving alone. Cultivating self-love, the foundation of solo happiness. Understanding self-worth. A 52-year-old woman recently recounted a holiday party interaction. When asked what she'd been up to, she listed training for a marathon, renovating her kitchen, and mentoring junior employees. Her colleagues' reply, "That's great, but don't you ever just want someone to share it all with?" made her realize his focus was solely on her relationship status, not her accomplishments. Self-worth operates independently of external validation, yet we're conditioned to seek confirmation, especially for life choices deviating from expected patterns. For singles past 40, this conditioning intensifies. Casual conversations often assume something needs fixing. That value diminishes without a partner to reflect it back. Your intrinsic value exists regardless of anyone's recognition of it. Understanding this distinction matters because self-worth isn't performance-based. You don't earn it through achievements, nor do you lose it through circumstances. A promotion doesn't increase your inherent value. Neither does a relationship. What changes is simply your awareness of that value, whether you're tuned in to your own worth or seeking evidence of it through external measures. The marathon, the kitchen renovation, the mentoring, these reflect your values and interests, not your validity as a person. They're expressions of who you are, not proof that you deserve to exist. Many people conflate accomplishments with worth because accomplishments are measurable. They provide concrete evidence. Intrinsic value requires no evidence. You possess it simply by being. This doesn't mean your achievements don't matter. They absolutely do. They contribute to your life's richness and your sense of purpose. They just don't determine whether you're fundamentally worthy of happiness, respect, or love. When you anchor your self-perception in intrinsic worth rather than external validation, something shifts. You stop waiting for permission to feel good about your choices. You recognize that living single isn't something that needs defending or justifying. Your life, as you've designed it, stands on its own merit because you've chosen it and you are enough. Practicing self-compassion. Self-compassion is fundamentally different from self-esteem. Self-esteem evaluates. It asks whether you're good enough, smart enough, successful enough. Self-compassion simply acknowledges that you're human, flawed, and worthy of kindness, regardless of how you measure up. This distinction matters because self-esteem fluctuates with circumstances. A bad day at work, a friendship that fizzles, a date that goes nowhere, these can temporarily shake your confidence. Self-compassion remains steady. It doesn't require you to be exceptional. Most of us extend more generosity to strangers than to ourselves. Consider how you'd respond if a friend called, upset about forgetting an important appointment. You'd likely offer reassurance, perhaps point out that everyone makes mistakes. Maybe suggest practical next steps. Your inner voice in the same situation? Probably harsher. How could you be so careless? This is why nothing works out for you. That critical voice often masquerades as motivation, as though berating yourself will prevent future mistakes. Research by Kristen Neff, a pioneer in self-compassion studies, consistently demonstrates that self-criticism is linked to lower resilience and higher levels of anxiety, while self-compassion is associated with enhanced emotional regulation and psychological well-being. The inner critic often speaks loudest when you've deviated from expected paths. Being single past 40 activates it relentlessly. It whispers that you should have tried harder, settled earlier, been more flexible. It catalogs perceived failures and replays them. Self-compassion doesn't silence this voice through argument or force. It acknowledges the pain underneath. Yes, this feels hard sometimes. Yes, I wonder if I made the right choices. And I'm allowed to feel uncertain without condemning myself. Developing self-compassion requires deliberate practice, particularly for those socialized to prioritize others' needs. One effective technique involves writing yourself a letter from the perspective of an unconditionally loving friend. Describe a situation where you feel inadequate or ashamed, perhaps attending yet another wedding solo, or explaining your relationship status to relatives. Then write what that compassionate friend would say. Not hollow reassurance, but genuine understanding. They might acknowledge the discomfort while affirming your choices. They might recognize both the freedom you've gained and the loneliness you sometimes feel. Another approach, notice the specific language your inner critic uses. Does it catastrophize, generalize from single instances? Use absolute terms like always or never. Awareness creates distance. You begin recognizing critical thoughts as mental events rather than facts. When you catch yourself thinking, I'm completely alone, you can reframe, I'm feeling lonely right now, and that's a normal human experience that will pass. Physical gestures anchor self compassion in the body. Placing your hand over your heart during difficult moments, taking 3 slow breaths, even giving yourself a brief hug, these aren't silly or indulgent. They activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the biological mechanism that calms stress responses. Self compassion isn't merely philosophical, it's physiological. The goal isn't eliminating self criticism entirely. That voice emerged for reasons, often protective ones, formed long ago. But you can change your relationship with it, transforming the harsh taskmaster into something gentler. A companion who acknowledges difficulty without amplifying shame, who recognizes your humanity without demanding perfection. Daily rituals for self-love. Self-compassion shifts from abstract concept to lived reality through consistent daily practices. These aren't grand gestures requiring hours of commitment or elaborate preparation. They're deliberate pauses woven into ordinary routines, small moments that accumulate into genuine transformation and anchor self-kindness in the texture of everyday life. Morning rituals set the tone before external demands intrude. Instead of reaching immediately for your phone to scroll through others' curated lives, spend 3 minutes with a simple question: what do I need today? Not what you should need, not what productivity culture demands, but what would genuinely support your well-being right now. Sometimes the answer is practical: an earlier bedtime tonight, a substantial breakfast instead of coffee on an empty stomach, 20 minutes of movement before work. Sometimes it's emotional: permission to decline that draining social obligation, a boundary conversation you've been avoiding, or simply acknowledging that you're tired and that's completely acceptable. Gratitude journaling works because it trains attention toward what's present rather than what's missing. Emmons and McCullough, 2003. Each evening, write down 3 specific things that went well. Not vague pleasantries, but concrete moments. The conversation with a colleague that made you laugh, sunlight through your kitchen window at breakfast, the satisfaction of completing a challenging task. This practice doesn't deny difficulties or paste artificial positivity over legitimate struggles. It develops capacity to notice goodness alongside hardship, creating psychological balance that sustains resilience. Mindfulness exercises need not involve meditation apps or yoga studios. Throughout your day, practice intentional presence during routine activities. While washing dishes, notice the water temperature, the slickness of soap, the simple competence of your hands performing familiar work. During your commute, observe details you usually overlook: architectural features, seasonal changes in trees along your route, the humanity visible in strangers' faces. These moments of attention interrupt the mental loop of past regrets and future anxieties, returning you to the only place where life actually happens, right now. Physical self-care transcends bubble baths and face masks, though those have their place. It means honoring your body's basic needs with the same consideration you'd offer someone you deeply love. Regular sleep schedules, meals that actually nourish rather than just fill time, movement that feels good rather than punitive. When you catch yourself dismissing these needs because you're too busy or they're not important enough, pause. Would you tell a dear friend their rest doesn't matter? Your body deserves the same respect. Build in regular moments of pleasure without justification or productivity attached. Not rewards for accomplishments, but simply because you deserve enjoyment. Fresh flowers on your table, music that lifts your spirits during mundane tasks, taking the scenic route home, reading fiction in the middle of the afternoon. These aren't frivolous indulgences. They're acknowledgments that your happiness matters, that pleasure itself is worthwhile, that your single life can and should contain beauty. The transformation doesn't announce itself dramatically. You'll notice it gradually. The inner critic's voice losing volume, decisions made with less agonizing, a quiet confidence that you're exactly where you need to be. Self-love, practiced daily, becomes not something you do, but simply who you are. Practical exercises. From reflection to action, mindful self-reflection techniques. Mindfulness isn't about achieving some Zen-like state of perpetual calm. It's the practice of noticing what's actually happening inside you and around you without immediately judging, fixing, or fleeing from it. For people navigating single life past 40, this skill becomes particularly valuable because so much mental energy gets consumed by narratives about what your life should look like instead of what it actually contains. When you're washing dishes and suddenly find yourself spiraling into worry about retirement savings or replaying an awkward conversation from 3 days ago, that's your mind doing what minds do. Mindfulness means recognizing, I'm worrying about money right now, or I'm rehashing that interaction without adding another layer of judgment like, I shouldn't be thinking about this, or something's wrong with me for dwelling on this. Start with something deceptively simple. 3 minutes of focused attention on your breath each morning. Not controlling it, just observing it. Your mind will wander, probably within 10 seconds. When it does, you haven't failed. You've just discovered where your attention went, and now you gently bring it back. That moment of noticing and returning is the actual practice. Most people expect mindfulness to feel peaceful immediately, but initially it often feels frustrating or boring because you're finally seeing how restless your thoughts actually are. Body scan exercises build awareness of physical sensations you've been ignoring. Lie down and systematically notice each part of your body, starting with your toes and moving upward. You're not trying to relax anything, just observing. Tension in your jaw, tightness across your shoulders, warmth in your hands. Many people discover they've been clenching muscles for hours without realizing it, carrying stress as physical armor. This practice doesn't necessarily dissolve the tension, but it interrupts the unconsciousness, giving you information about how emotions manifest in your body. Values clarification exercises help distinguish between what you genuinely care about and what you've absorbed from external expectations. List 10 things that matter most to you, not aspirational values you think you should have, but honest ones. Then look at how you actually spend your time and money. Many people discover a jarring gap between what they say matters and where their energy actually goes. You might genuinely value connection and growth, yet find your evenings consistently spent scrolling alone, having deferred social activities or learning opportunities until some mythical, better time. This realization, common in therapeutic settings like acceptance and commitment therapy where values are explored, often acts as a powerful catalyst. Harris, 2009. It prompts you to consciously redirect your time and energy toward pursuits that genuinely align with what truly matters, moving from a deferred life to an actively chosen one. Try the 5 whys technique to excavate deeper motivations. If you want a relationship, ask why. Maybe you answer companionship. Ask why that matters. Because I don't want to be lonely. Why does loneliness feel threatening? Keep going until you reach something fundamental. Perhaps it's not actually about partnership, but about meaningful connection, which exists in multiple forms, or about fearing your life lacks significance. Journaling prompts work best when specific rather than generic. Instead of, how do I feel today? Try, what moment today made me feel most alive? Or, what assumption about my life did I notice myself making this week? Write for 10 minutes without editing. You're not crafting publishable prose. You're thinking on paper, letting contradictions and half-formed ideas emerge without immediately resolving them. Goal setting and action plans. Carolyn had filled 17 pages in her journal over 3 weeks, working through prompts about values, loneliness, and moments of aliveness. The exercise had surfaced something unexpected. She kept returning to teaching, not her actual job as a corporate trainer, but informal moments when she'd explained photography techniques to a neighbor or helped her nephew understand fractions. She valued transmission of knowledge in a way her current role didn't satisfy. But this realization sat inert on the page until she attended a workshop on goal setting that required participants to translate insights into commitments with deadlines. Within 6 months, Carolyn had launched weekend photography workshops from her apartment. She hadn't quit her job or transformed her entire life. She'd created one specific time-bound goal that aligned with what her reflection had revealed. This progression from awareness to action illustrates why goal-setting frameworks matter. They convert understanding into measurable change. SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, have been standard in organizational psychology since George T. Doran introduced the concept in 1981 in Management Review. Yet people consistently misapply them to personal development. The framework isn't about rigid productivity optimization, it's about addressing the gap between intention and follow-through that leaves so many insights languishing as someday fantasies. Doran, 1981. Specific means defining exactly what you're doing, not vague aspirations. Be more social lacks traction. Attend 2 community events per month gives you something concrete to schedule and evaluate. Measurable provides evidence of progress, not to judge yourself harshly when you fall short, but to notice patterns. If you planned 4 coffee dates but managed one, that's data. Maybe your energy runs low after work, suggesting weekend plans work better, or perhaps you need to initiate rather than wait for invitations. Achievable doesn't mean easy or unchallenging. It means working with actual constraints rather than idealized circumstances. A 50-hour work week, limited budget, and chronic fatigue are real factors. Designing goals that ignore them sets up failure that reinforces negative self-perception. If you haven't exercised in years, run 3 miles daily battles against current capacity and available time. Walk 15 minutes, 3 mornings weekly, builds from where you actually are. Relevant connects back to values clarification. You might set a goal to learn Italian because it sounds sophisticated, but if you never intend to travel to Italy and have no Italian-speaking community nearby, the goal satisfies someone else's idea of self-improvement, rather than serving what genuinely matters to you. Ask, does this move me toward the life I'm actually building, or the life I think I should want? Time-bound creates urgency and review points. Eventually take a pottery class drifts indefinitely. Register for the 8-week session starting September 10th requires a decision. Research from Dominican University of California found that people who wrote down goals, created action commitments, and shared progress with a friend achieved significantly more than those who merely thought about goals. The study, led by Dr. Gail Matthews and involving 267 participants, showed that those who wrote down their goals, made action commitments, and sent weekly progress reports to a friend achieved 76% success versus 43% for those who merely thought about their goals. Writing goals down isn't magical thinking. It's externalizing commitment so it exists beyond fluctuating motivation. Break larger goals into specific next actions. Develop deeper friendships becomes text 3 people this week to suggest getting together. Then it becomes send the actual text by Wednesday evening. The smaller the step, the less resistance you'll encounter. You're not redesigning your entire social life in one moment. You're doing the specific thing in front of you. Track progress without turning it into performance anxiety. A simple monthly check-in works. What actually happened? What got in the way? What surprised me? This isn't about achieving perfection, but noticing reality. Many people discover that goals need adjustment not because they failed, but because they learned something about what actually serves their well-being versus what looked good on paper. Share commitments selectively with people who will support without judgment. Not everyone needs to know you're working on something, but choosing one person to send brief updates creates gentle external accountability that often makes the difference between sustained effort and abandoned intentions. Implementing daily routines for joy. Building sustainable happiness requires moving from ambitious overhauls to micro practices. Small actions embedded so naturally into existing routines that they stop feeling like effort. The mistake most people make when trying to incorporate joy into daily life is treating it like another project requiring willpower and discipline. That approach burns out fast. Instead, focus on attaching tiny pleasurable moments to things you're already doing. Habit stacking works because it leverages existing neural pathways. James Clear describes this in Atomic Habits. You pair a new behavior with an established one, using the existing habit as a trigger. If you already make coffee every morning, that's your anchor. While the coffee brews, spend 90 seconds stretching near the counter or looking out the window without checking your phone. The coffee routine doesn't change. You've just added a small moment of physical ease or visual pleasure to something that was happening anyway. This principle applies across the day in ways that accumulate without overwhelming. After you sit down at your desk, take 3 deep breaths before opening email. When you finish washing dishes, light a candle you actually like. During your commute home, play one song that genuinely lifts your mood instead of the same news loop that leaves you depleted. The key is specificity and consistency and timing, not duration. Research on habit formation from University College London found that automaticity, the point where behavior happens without conscious decision, develops through repetition in stable contexts, not through intensity or duration. Philippa Lally's 2009 study showed habit formation taking an average of 66 days, with significant individual variation depending on complexity. A 2-minute practice done daily in the same context will embed faster than a 30-minute practice attempted sporadically when motivation strikes. Lally et al., 2009. Choose one anchor habit you already have, brushing teeth, eating lunch, arriving home, and attach one specific joyful micro-practice to it. Write it down with precision. After I close my laptop at end of workday, I will spend 2 minutes watering my plants. Not, I'll try to appreciate nature more, or I should garden eventually. One concrete action, one existing trigger, one specific timing. Start with just one pairing. Let it run for 3 weeks before adding another. Most people sabotage sustainable change by stacking too many new practices at once, creating a system that collapses under its own complexity. You're not building a perfect routine. You're making one small thing automatic before adding the next. Track it minimally. A single check mark on a wall calendar when you do the thing creates visible momentum without elaborate systems. Checking off 17 days in a row generates its own motivation to not break the chain, a principle popularized by comedian Jerry Seinfeld for his writing practice. Isaac, 2007. Isaac, 2007. When you miss a day, notice without catastrophizing. The goal isn't perfection, but direction. Missing once doesn't erase the pattern you're building. It's just data about what interrupted the routine. Maybe you need a backup version for chaotic days. If the full practice doesn't happen, the abbreviated one still counts. The real transformation happens when these micro practices stop being things you're trying to remember and become simply what you do. Joy shifts from something you pursue to something woven through the structure of ordinary days. You're not waiting for circumstances to change before you feel good. You're building small, reliable sources of pleasure that exist regardless of relationship status, work stress, or external validation. Real-world examples, stories of thriving single lives, thriving through career and passion. Meet Sarah, who turned 52 last March and spent her birthday weekend not nursing loneliness, but teaching a pottery workshop she'd developed over 6 years of evening classes. She'd walked away from a corporate career at 43, right around the time friends were coupling up or recoupling, and built something entirely her own. Her studio now sits in a converted garage behind her house, and she schedules teaching sessions around her consulting work, which she does precisely enough to fund the life she wants, not the one she thinks she should want. What struck me most about Sarah's story wasn't the pottery itself. It was how she described Tuesday evenings, the exact kind of ordinary moment that reveals whether someone is truly content or simply busy enough to avoid feeling empty. She fires kilns on Tuesdays. She listens to podcasts about Renaissance art. Sometimes a friend stops by with wine, sometimes not. The rhythm she's created doesn't require another person to validate it. Then there's Marcus, who redirected his energy after his divorce at 46 into something unexpected. Competitive cycling. Not casual weekend rides, but the kind of training that means waking at 5:30 and logging miles before work. He joined a cycling club, traveled to races in other states, built friendships around shared suffering on mountain climbs. When I asked what he looked forward to, he didn't hesitate. A century ride in Vermont he'd been training for all summer, and the cabin he'd rented alone afterward to recover and read the stack of books he never had time for when he was married. These aren't people who stumbled into contentment. They built it deliberately by identifying what genuinely mattered to them and structuring their lives accordingly. Sarah didn't wake up one morning loving pottery. She tried painting first, hated it, then tried ceramics at a community center because a neighbor mentioned it. Marcus admitted he initially took up cycling to lose the divorce weight, but discovered something deeper, a sense of achievement that had nothing to do with anyone else's expectations. Both face questions, of course. Family gatherings where relatives ask if they're seeing anyone. Friends who assume they must be lonely. But they've developed something crucial, confidence in their choices. Not defensiveness, but genuine certainty that their lives work. Sarah once told her sister, kindly but firmly, "I'm not waiting for my life to start. This is it, and I love it." Marcus stopped explaining himself entirely and just started inviting people to watch him race. What makes their stories powerful isn't that they're exceptional people with unusual circumstances. Sarah has financial concerns like everyone else. Marcus deals with aging parents and career uncertainty. They've simply refused to let relationship status determine whether they're allowed to pursue what brings them joy and purpose. The satisfaction in their lives comes from the same place it comes from for anyone: Meaningful work, genuine connections, personal growth, and the freedom to shape their days around their values. Their lives aren't perfect. They have hard days, moments of doubt, times when coupling up seems easier. But when you ask what they're proud of or what they're anticipating, their answers are immediate and specific. Not vague hopes that something external will finally make them happy, but concrete plans they're actively building. That's the difference between existing in singleness and thriving in it. Building rich social networks. A mid-40s marketing professional named Marcus started hosting monthly dinner parties at his apartment after he noticed most of his social interactions had dwindled to work meetings and occasional texts. He invited colleagues, neighbors, and friends of friends. Within 6 months, his circle expanded from a handful of people to a rotating group of 30 regulars who now plan weekend trips together and show up for each other during difficult times. Then there's Claire, who joined a pottery class at 52, expecting nothing more than a creative outlet. What she found instead was a community of artists who meet for coffee between sessions, attend gallery openings together, and support each other's work. When Claire's sister passed away unexpectedly, it was these friends who filled her refrigerator with meals and sat with her during the hardest nights. She didn't need to explain her grief or apologize for needing space. They simply showed up. These stories share a common thread. Building a vibrant social life after 40 doesn't require extraordinary circumstances or exceptional charisma. It requires deliberate action, choosing to show up, to invest time, to remain open to connection even when it feels easier to stay home. The difference between those who feel isolated and those who feel genuinely connected often comes down to a willingness to be vulnerable and consistent. Sarah, a software engineer in her late 40s, found her closest friendships not through dramatic bonding moments, but through the simple act of showing up to the same yoga class every Tuesday morning for 3 years. The connections deepened gradually. Post-class coffee, shared struggles with aging parents, celebrations of career milestones. What began as polite nods became a support network that rivals any traditional family structure. Community ties also emerge in unexpected places. David volunteers at a food bank every Saturday morning, not from obligation, but because he values the connection to something larger than himself. The relationships he's built there, with other volunteers, with regular clients, with the organization's staff, give him a sense of purpose and belonging that extends far beyond those few hours each week. When he mentions his volunteer work at social gatherings, people often respond with admiration, but David insists the real benefit flows the other way. "I get so much more than I give," he says. What makes these connections meaningful isn't their intensity or exclusivity. It's their diversity and reciprocity. Unlike romantic relationships, which often demand singular focus, thriving social networks draw strength from variety. Book clubs, running groups, professional associations, neighborhood gatherings. Each circle serves different needs and different parts of identity. The mistake many people make is treating friendship as something that happens passively, something that should occur naturally without effort. But the individuals who build vibrant social lives treat connection as a practice. They text to check in, remember important dates, offer help before it's requested, and accept help when it's offered. They understand that building community requires the same attention and care that any meaningful relationship demands. This isn't about replacing romantic partnership or pretending it doesn't matter. It's about recognizing that happiness doesn't have a single source. The research supports what these stories illustrate. People with strong social ties report higher life satisfaction, better health outcomes, and greater resilience during difficult times, regardless of relationship status. The key lies not in the presence or absence of a romantic partner, but in the quality and breadth of social connections. Holt Lundstad et al., 2010, Umberson and Caras Montez, 2010, Yang et al., 2016.